Hello and welcome. You are listening to From Here with a View, a We Are the Seeds Philadelphia podcast. This is Tailinh Agoyo. In this episode, I'm honored to share a conversation with someone very special to me, Gregory Norman Cruz. Greg and I first met in the early 90s as young actors on the TNT film Tecumseh. He is a longtime friend and I hold deep respect and admiration for him. When the opportunity came for Greg to join us at our annual We Are the Seeds Philly in 2024, it felt like a homecoming. His presence elevated the entire celebration. This episode of From Here with a View was recorded and filmed live on stage, and what unfolded was deeply poignant. Greg's path through the film and theater world has been shaped by a nuanced understanding of identity, community, and storytelling, guided by purpose and responsibility. In recent years, he's endured the profound weight of personal loss. Through that grief, he's found a powerful lens through which to reflect on life, love, and healing. We're so grateful that Greg made the time and space to share with us so openly. His wisdom is a gift, and we know it will resonate and inspire everyone who listens. Thank you for joining us.
Shall we get started? We're here at We're the Seeds Philly 2024, and I'm here having a conversation with Gregory Norman Cruz, who was so wonderful to come in from Los Angeles on Thursday to visit with us this weekend, and we just feel really honored that you're taking the time and making the space in your life to come and be with us today. So let's just start with talking about your background as an actor. I'm interested to know, how did you start, and what do you consider to be your career highlights?
Wow. Okay, let's start with an easy one. Wow. Boy, I started acting in 1977, and at the time there was a Chicano movement. It was on the heels of the civil rights movement. My brother was very involved. He was a Brown Beret. And I started seeing theater that I'd never seen before. I'd started seeing Chicanos doing theater, which I'd never seen before. A lot of activism going on just really ignited me. So I started to get involved with that. There was a company called the Teatro Urbano in Los Angeles. I started getting a little bit involved with them. And then my brother was with another one from the Grape Strike in 1964 called the Teatro Campesino, or the Farm Workers Theater. Luis Valdez's group. He went on to write and produce and direct Zoot Suit. And I ended up living in San Juan Bautista, which is about 400 miles, the tiniest town you've ever seen, 8 miles from the nearest other town where the Teatro Campesino was based. And then I slowly got sucked in. And I started to do things with them. A production company came up to San Juan Bautista and auditioned us for a movie. We all decided to do it. I just happened to be at the right place at the right time. I got a co-star part. Next thing I know, I was on location at Mount Lassen in Los Angeles shooting a movie. I thought that was the greatest thing I'd ever seen in my life, felt in my life, done in my life. And I didn't get paid that much, but boy, it was a treasure. So I thought, wow, what an easy way to make money. That's the true story. I really got into the business thinking I'm going to make a mint. I'm a star now. Everybody's going to know who I am. I did a movie. And then I moved back to Los Angeles, and they were saying you need an agent and you need headshots and I was like, why? I really sincerely meant, why? And I found out, the hard way. So after a lot of poverty, I gave it 2 years, and it's been over 40, and here I am.
40 years, which
Over
is
40
incredible.
years.
I mean, you have an
Yeah.
extraordinary career. So, yeah, in terms of highlights, I'm wondering, not necessarily what may have been box office highlights or really, reviews or things like that, but in terms of, for your personal journey, what have been highlights?
One of the main highlights for me in my career is I did a film called The Warrant with Neil McDonough as executive producer and as the star. It was a period piece from the 1800s about him, and he's a sheriff, and about how things were at that time after the Civil War. These two characters had been in a squad in the Civil War in the Union Army, and then they become sheriffs, himself and myself. I didn't know they were going to, but they did a sequel right after COVID, and called me and said, we're going to do this again.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then I found out that they had really rewritten the character, wrote me in quite a bit. I have a scene with a love interest, and we're in very dire straits at this point. And we did this long scene. It was very intimate, and they gave us carte blanche. And they kept it in the film, which totally blew my mind. That particular scene, I was able to really feel what was going on with what we were saying to each other. It was very intimate. It was very tragic and revealing and romantic in a certain sense, because we had not seen each other for a long time. And it's like when you sit down with somebody and you let all the veils drop, and your most vulnerable self, and you pray that this other person is going to be there for you, yet at the same time you trust that they will. And that for me was one of the best things I've ever done. It was so heartfelt. And Amy Hargreaves, who played the lady across from me, is an incredible actress, incredibly giving. And that's what you need when you do scenes that are this so close to the heart.
Right, that's what makes it work.
Yeah, so it makes it work.
I really appreciate the highlight you chose, because when you talk about being an actor and when you're on set, it can go all kinds of different ways. And sometimes it's just a job, and sometimes it really touches you as an artist. It touches your soul and as a human. And that sounds like that's what you experienced with that.
That's what I experienced. I was so supported by everyone behind the camera, by the executive producers, and that they would leave that scene as long as it was in there. Really, I felt so honored.
That's very rare.
Yeah, very rare. Yeah, I think it's like the only time that's ever happened.
Did you know that was going to happen before you started shooting?
No. It wasn't a big budget film, so I thought, we got to get this done, and then they're going to chop, and fit it in, and it'll look nice. And then I just was blown away that they left it in, and it's so perfect for the film.
It sounds beautiful. That's incredible. I'd like to make a little bit of a shift to challenges.
Oh, yeah.
So, wondering if you could highlight some challenges that you faced during your acting career, particularly as an indigenous Mexica man in the industry?
Yes, I can. It wasn't easy making the decision to go ahead and do indigenous roles. I grew up in Los Angeles on the East Side. I grew up in a very Mexican culture, and through the civil rights and the Chicano movements and the grape strikes and all those times that people were struggling so hard and the media wasn't covering most of it and couldn't anyway. Now it's so much easier. I was learning, and as my brother got involved more with the culture, and I started meeting people who actually knew more about it, were more educated about who we were as people. And I'm talking, when I say we, I mean people of Mexican culture. I started to know that I actually was an indigenous man. I didn't know that. Nobody told me. There was none of our culture in school. My mother and father could speak Spanish. They didn't have accents, but somehow we didn't get to learn to speak Spanish. And I think that was because they wanted to leave it out so that we didn't have an accent so we can get good jobs. But as I started to learn more, working especially with the Teatro Campesino and different teatros at that time, there was a whole organization called Tenaz that started to rise. And as they started to rise, people started to pick up their heads and go, this is who I am. And then it was, this is who I am. And then when the this is who I am started to hit me, I realized I had it all wrong. At a younger age, started to reemerge as who I really am and who I want to be and what that means. And then as I got older, I started to realize the responsibilities behind that.
Right.
At least took on the responsibilities, and I take them now with the challenges with energy and with forward optimism. I think it's really good to look at those things and go, great, I jumped those other hoops, I could jump these, and to move forward and see what you can do as an indigenous person. So I embraced it.
In Hollywood, the road hasn't been easy for people of color, brown people, indigenous people. There's a lot of stereotyping. There's not a lot of roles. There are not a lot of natural stories or indigenous people telling their stories in their own voices. There's more of that happening today, a bit more, but there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
You know, even talking about what we worked on 30 years ago, it was very formulaic and it was very, they liked the stoic male. The writing was terrible and it was a really bad portrayal, and that's continued on. I say even to today, there's a lot of just really bad stuff coming out. So as an actor, you have to work, you have to make a living. What are some of the tricks that you've learned where you don't make waves where you're working, but you also can make sure that there is some truth and authenticity to the work that you bring?
You turn into a chameleon, I think. And that's not such a bad thing if you can look at it from a different light, a little bit objectively. Sometimes you've got to do things you don't want to do. And I'm not talking in terms of roles. I turned roles down at an early age, which means that I had to literally eat rice and beans only, me and my two dogs, not having electricity, not having gas, behind in the rent, but sticking to that person I believed I was, that I wanted to be so desperately. I didn't want to be a stereotype. And yet, again, there's the other side of that where I was doing roles that I didn't realize that I was falling right into that trap. Things that make me cringe a little.
Yeah, before you move on to that, I just want to share, because this is how I know you, and this is why I've always had so much respect for you and the work that you do, is because you told me a long time ago that you worked on Scarface, and then you had a feeling about the work you were doing there. You didn't want to fall into the gangster roles or the violent roles, and that you wouldn't. So if you could share a little bit about that.
Sure.
And then one more highlight is when you talk about rice and beans.
Yeah.
One time, maybe 20 years ago, you shared with me, we were out in a restaurant and Greg says, these creamers really come in handy if you have no money and you're hungry. And he would share with me a story that, like, if you just want to be full, you order a coffee, you have a couple dollars, you order a coffee, and the creamers will fill you up.
Yeah.
I was amazed, and I just respected so much and looked up to you in the way that you would turn down roles that just were not good for you or us as a community, and you would be hungry, and that's really powerful. That's a powerful statement. So I'll let you share.
Right, give me the beginning of
The beginning of the question was when you worked, was Scarface your first movie?
No,
One of your first?
Yeah.
You were very young.
I was very young.
How old were you?
I was in my early 20s.
So if you want to share what your role was in that movie and then how it impacted you, thinking like, how are you being portrayed? How are you portraying your community, and how that changed your mindset, how you wanted to go forward? Because you came from that gorgeous theater background where you said, I am.
This is who I am.
And then
Here
you're
we
in
go.
Hollywood where they're like, no, that's not who you are. You're just a gangster in this movie. You have no character. You have no depth.
Yeah, in their interpretation of who I was, this is who you are. And I was like, oh man, okay, here we go. Yeah, the Scarface and roles like that were prevalent at the time for most of us that were people of color, and it was another you're the bad Colombian guy who gets up and tries to kill the other bad guy in order to get whatever it is that you're going to get. Not the greatest portrayal of indigenous people, not the greatest portrayal of people of culture or color. I understand, thank God it was a cult film, so that gives it a little bit of an excuse. They can kind of fudge it a little bit of license. But I was asked in my early career to be the guy with the bandana and the knife. I did one of those, and I really had to soul search it. That's all there was. So if you turn stuff down,
That's all there was.
that's all there was.
Right.
The pressure was incredible. The agent's calling you, are you crazy? You just booked this. You're not going to do it? And you're looking at your bills and wondering, when are they going to throw me out? And But sticking to your guns is really important, I think, for a lot of people. And I think they need people like you and I to do the best that they can in that regard, because we are in the public eye. And I don't have to take that as a responsibility. I'm not really responsible to anybody but myself, which I really want to put that for the young people. You are responsible for yourself. You're not responsible to me or anybody else. But if you decide that you are a part of a community and you want to see things move forward for everybody, not just our community, then you might want to pick up that challenge and look at it and go, what's this going to do for me? You know, and I promise you it'll do wonders for you. You will feel such a wonderful feeling inside yourself, because you won't be like this. You won't be withdrawn. You won't be afraid. So at that time, I just said no a lot. And which leads me to that story. I was doing a show at the Berkeley Repertory Theater in Northern California. And I was playing I can't remember the name of the particular tribe, but we were South American Indians. And it had a lot to do with indoctrination. And I wasn't making much money there. I had to pay rent there as well as rent in Los Angeles. So I was broke. You know, they weren't paying very, very well. I didn't have a lead. And I would go to this Russian restaurant. That's where that thing came from. And there were two things that happened there. One, the borscht was really cheap, you know, and two, the coffee was really cheap, and they gave you a lot of creamer. They had this big thing. I thought it was like a glass of milk that like, here you go. But you can fill yourself up. You know, you learn to adapt. You learn to adapt, and I learned to adapt, and I learned to adapt, and it lasted a very, 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 very long time. It was really hard. Didn't have a social life, didn't get to go when I was young to do a lot of things. I saw all my friends going out and come on, you know, I'm like, yeah, no, go ahead, you know, because I didn't have the money I didn't have the clothes, I didn't have the money, I couldn't do that. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I knew that if I did that, I'd be broke, the dogs wouldn't eat. So I had to not do that. And a lot of that part of my life that I would have loved to have gone and partied at that right age, I couldn't go. But I was dedicated to this. That was going
to be my question. First, why the dedication, right? Besides, I think a lot of actors feel like, well, it bit me, I got it, and I can't, this is what I have to do, right? But then I have another thought about when you say no to jobs, there also is kind of this missed opportunity. It's this weird double-edged thing where someone else is going to do it, and they're going to do, they might not care like you care, and they're going to just do the stereotype, and everybody will praise them, and there's no one on the inside that can make different choices, even if they're a little bit more subtle, even if it's not exactly how you would have done it. It makes change and it pushes things forward a little bit at a time. So how do you weigh out, like, I'm not doing this job, or I'll take this job and I'm just going to say it a little bit differently, or I'm not going to pick up the gun, or how do you balance that?
Ooh, have I got stories?
Well, let's tell us some.
Yeah, there was a particular actor that I knew of color that I admire and still admire, and I went to him one day, and I was an older actor, and I said, I'm having a real struggle with this. I see that I turn stuff down, and I could name other names that these guys pick it up. That they're doing it all over the place. They don't care. And I'm like, I'm struggling with this, man. Can you give me a hand? What, you got anything you can say about this? He was doing okay in the industry. And he said, no, man, take all the jobs. Take them all. Take every one of them. Don't worry about that right now. Just do this. I didn't understand. I'm still grappling with that to this day. But I kind of have an idea what he was saying was, you've got to build from something. And if you've got nothing, no one's going to offer you any work. So you have to bend over backward. You have to be quiet. You have to turn your head. And I have a real hard time with that. Thank God I grew up where I grew up, poor and in East LA, because it taught me, I wouldn't want to fight, and I'd cry every time something had to go down, and I had to learn, you got to stand up for yourself. And I think it came from that. So I'm grateful for that.
Do you have an example of being on a show where a director or producer wanted you to do something and you were like, absolutely not, or you had to find a creative way to get out of that situation?
I've been really fortunate in that I didn't have anybody that was pushing me into doing anything. In fact, I started early on in my career, thank goodness. Again, you learn from these things if you allow yourself to learn from them. I think that's really important because you can learn from anything. Adversity can make you stronger. I started talking to my agent saying, oh, we booked that. And I would turn stuff down. So now I was only doing stuff that I thought was passable. They weren't great roles still. But I could make something out of it. I could do it a different way. And then my interpretation is it going to enhance the project? I started to think like an actor. Is this going to enhance the project? Is this going to be a better way of doing this? Are they not seeing this? Is this something I can add? They can go, wow, yeah, man, excellent. So I would have her call the directors or call the production and say, Greg wants to talk to the director. And they'd be like, who does he think he is? But I actually had a director call me up and say, hi, this is so-and-so. I don't remember his name, it was a long time ago. I understand you have questions about Cop Rock.
You were in Cop Rock?
I was in Cop Rock.
Come on!
Yeah, I didn't sing, but I was in Cop Rock.
Dance and song. Get out of here!
I was in Cop Rock. And I had to play
my goodness.
this bad guy in prison who attacks the main guy. And I'm like, oh man, when I started looking at it and trying to figure it out. And so the director actually called me. And I said, look, I have this idea. What if we do this? And he's actually coming from that. And this is the reason why he's doing this, rather than just doing it for no stupid reason at all, And he was like, yeah, man. Yeah, let's do that. You got it. I said, will we do that? When I get there, we'll do that. It's not going to be like, yeah, okay, we'll get you, and then we'll get you on set, and then we'll change it. He said, don't worry, man, I got you. And that gave me hope, because if one guy, and he's not indigenous, can say, yeah, that's a great idea, then somebody else out there is going to, the odds are there's people out there that want to hear from you. They want to hear from you. They want to see something different. They're tired of the same thing. And then the bell rang, and I went, wow, what a revelation. You actually are important. What your input is important. What you can bring is going to enhance their project. Of course they want that.
Wow, that is a huge revelation, and that must have changed the course for you.
It helped a lot. I started to gain confidence, and then again, we talked about a technique I used the other day where every time I'd go to an audition, it wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be. It wasn't a lead. It was just this add-on to enhance the leads, and it usually wasn't that great as a career mover. And then I wasn't booking anything for a while, and I was broke for a long time, and I was getting really angry. And so I sat in the car, and we talked about this one day, and I was going into an audition, and I saw all the same people. We all had the same look on our face, and I sat in the car, and I got really angry, and I said, okay, the heck with you people. Not quite the word I used, but I'm going to go in there. And I don't care what you think. I'm done with this. I'm going to blow you away just because I don't care anymore. I don't care what you think. I don't care if I get this job. I just want to go in there and go, here, watch this. Check this out, man. I don't care about you, right? I walked in, did that, walked away, booked the job, booked the next job, booked the next job. And essentially what I did was I removed my obstacle for myself. And that obstacle, I think, ultimately was fear.
Right.
I can't do this. And then you're also offering me nothing. Watch what I can do with your nothing. Watch how clever I am. And then I started to come into my own. If you're that clever, you're not so dumb. If you're not so dumb, you know what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, there's more to learn. If there's more to learn, there's more challenges. If there's more challenges, there's more obstacles. But if you got over that obstacle, you can get over that obstacle.
Wow.
And so you start to become that athlete. You start going from rookie to pro. And you're not looking for the right shoes anymore. You know what they are.
Incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And it starts to sink in. Doors started opening when I started making opportunities in my own mind. That energy, and I gotta be careful here, people may not want to hook into that kind of talk, started creating energy, at least just for me. And then all of a sudden, these things started coming my way, and people were calling and saying, you should study with this guy, you should work with that guy, you should. And I hooked up with an incredible acting instructor named Sel Romeo. Now, mind you, at the beginning of my career, I thought I was some stuff. I thought I was something, something really hot off the grill. And I didn't want anybody messing around with that. And now that I look back on that, I'm glad I did that, because that's exactly where I should have been. I thought I was hot stuff. Why shouldn't I have an opinion of myself that I'm hot stuff with what I do? I'm not hurting anybody. So I'm bringing much more when I have that kind of attitude than, oh my God, what am I doing? Which I learned later. And learning from Sel Romeo was one of the most incredible gifts. Knowing him, meeting him. Sel passed just recently. They asked me to speak at his funeral. I was so glad. And he taught me how to be gentle with myself, how to not be so hard on myself, how this industry can ruin you, and here's a way not to. And relax inside yourself, relax within your instrument, allow yourself to have this moment where you are who you are and you are capable of. And I started to learn that from him in these relaxation techniques. And I didn't realize that I was not there. And of course the acting and doing scenes in front of him, and I got better and better and better and better. My confidence got better. Anyway, that was my road up forward.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
There are actors that stand out as being generous and wonderful, and I was just curious if you could share who you like to work with.
Ooh, that's a tough one. Boy, how do I approach this? Every day I go to a dog park, I won't say which one, in Los Angeles, and we have a little group of dog park people. We all have our pups and they run around and have fun. And they have conversations about, oh, did you see this movie? Well, I've been following this director forever and he did A to Z to B. I don't know anybody. But there's a reason for that. What helps me a lot, especially it's a dog park where stars do go and visit with their dogs. And I don't know who they are. So they'll show up with their pup and my dog will like them and their dog will like them and they're having fun.
It's all about the dogs.
It's all about the dogs. And so we're just having a wonderful day and, we're just talking to each other. And here's this great human being that I just met and they're so cool. And so you get to know each other. And then later, it's like, oh, by the way, my name is, and I'm so-and-so, and I still don't know who they are. I like that. I like getting to know who somebody is without knowing who they are. You know what I mean?
Their media persona.
Yes, their media persona. I think now I need to start to know who's who. My career's moved forward a little bit, and I kind of need to know who's producing what and who stars and which indigenous actors are prevalent. And so that's the hard part for me to answer that question, because I can't really grab names out of anywhere.
Yeah.
Tantu Cardinal.
Mm-hmm.
Love Tantu.
Mm-hmm.
I worked with her. She played my mom in Tecumseh. And I don't know Lily Gladstone, but I was flipping over the couch for her because I'm like, oh, finally,
Absolutely.
And then her work, seeing these things. It's funny that these are women.
Well, I appreciate that too.
I didn't. It just right off the top of my head, they weren't men.
Right.
In the industry, and
Right.
men get, they do get an edge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even indigenous men.
They get an edge.
They get an edge in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think men in general get an edge
Yeah.
in the industry and
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Why you laugh?
I'm glad we cleared that up. Have you felt like you've had the support of the indigenous community?
Yeah. To be honest, I would say yes. And have I had obstructions or obstacles? Absolutely. When I decided to go ahead and let myself be who I am and be involved in that part of the industry, that part of the industry was dominated by cultures that were not mine. And that was difficult to navigate because I didn't want to represent something that I wasn't, but I also had to remember that I'm an actor. I can do anything. And if that opportunity offers itself to me in that way, as an indigenous man, I should be able to, given enough time, adapt myself so that I do something that is productive to the production, not just to me as personally as an actor, but productive to the production. As an impact in my life, taking on the indigenous roles and having a part of that, have that become a part of my life, yes, it has affected my life personally. I put myself into positions of obstacles and contrast in order to grow. And I was surrounded by people who were supportive because they gravitated to me as I went on to that journey. I was very fortunate. So yes, I had to find out what it felt like to sit in a chair and to allow myself to open my emotions, to actually let myself feel what I was feeling as a man. And boy, did I have obstacles there. I came from a place where, for example, and I will disconnect the rest of the community that I was in. This was my experience. Don't get into the arts, man. You know, that's what queers do. Queers
Who
go
says
in.
this?
Oh, when I grew up, when I was little, you know, oh man, you know that guy, right? And I had to get over all those things and relearn about humanity, you know, and not to do that to people. There's no reason for that. Yet when you're little, that, you know, if that's what your society is, and your society is a rough place. You know, you better
protect
you
yourself.
better watch out. You better protect yourself. So I had to unlearn a lot of that, and getting into those acting classes helped a lot with that, and let me drop into my emotions and let me feel my feminine self, if that's what it is. And as I started to do that, I started to learn more about who I was as a person. If it wasn't for the arts, I don't think I ever would know. I started to actually care more about people. And the more I saw the vulnerability, which is key for most men in the world, I think you got to really embrace that. It's not going to take away your manhood. It's going to enhance it. And I think people need to know that. It just broadened my horizons so much as a human being. And then as my horizons broadened and my relationships became better in my life, my acting got better.
Wow.
Yeah. This one's tough. So I got to take a second here. I lost my son in April. He was 23 years old. It was a tragic accident. My son's name is Zane Gregory Cruz. And that, of course, that's going to, I don't know about anybody else, but it destroyed my world. And I had to find a way to rebuild and to make, as somebody who cares about my family and my community, I also needed to make sure they were okay, that they didn't need to come and pick me up off the floor. Do I have my moments? Yes. Do I go home and, you know, cry a lot? Yeah, I do. I do it driving down the street. I pull over. I do it walking the dog. I'm someone who struggles with allowing other people to see me in that position outside of being an actor, which is not me. It's a character, so I can do it. So I had to grapple with that, and it's so recent. And I don't know whether it's just being numb that allows me to move forward, but it opened a lot of doors. It gave me a lot of questions in my life. Of course, you look back as a parent going, what did I do? And the other part of me that has a certain modicum of wisdom says you didn't do anything, this isn't your fault. And I have my ex-wife is one of my best friends, and we have a wonderful relationship. When we were there and standing over his body at the mortuary, I made a promise to my son over his body with her there, that before I even say that, I was so upset by this and so angry and so whatever. But I made a promise to him as I let that all wash away and just stood there looking at him, that I would live my best life, which is what I always wanted him to do. And making that promise to him, I meant it with my heart and soul. And it's the hardest promise I've ever made, because I don't like to make promises, because then you got to keep them. So that's what prompted me to come. You gave me the option of not coming now or coming next year. But I think these things in life that hold you down, or can, if you allow them to, they have to be addressed head on. At least for me, in my interpretation of life, in my need to live that best life, that means that I don't want to go down. I want to go up. And one of the things that I said to Cynthia on the phone one day, which kind of blew my mind to me, in a very revelatory way, was I said, I have to do that, because if I do that, meaning live my best life, because if I do that, if I start raising myself, and you can go in whatever direction you want with that, but if my heart, soul, and being start opening up and doing the best I can to live a better life for me, whatever that means, moment to moment, then I say,
Take a breath.
yeah. Then wherever he may be, if you believe that he's somewhere, that's the road to him. Whenever it is that I'm able to see him again, that's going to get me there.
Yeah.
But if I take those other roads,
Wow.
I'll never be able to sorry, I'll never be able to see him. So with everything we have choices, and we can, everything's a choice, I think, and it's just hard sometimes to make it's hard to make hard choices. But when I look at it objectively, if I want to have that better life, my best life, then that's almost the only road I can take. The other roads aren't going to make me happy, and they're not going to do anything for anybody around me. And I'm not going to be able to do anything that I want to do in terms of leadership, because I do want to embrace that. So I want to be an example if I can. And anybody can do whatever they want, whatever they may with that. But so that has been the hardest thing. Yeah, so here I am.
Here you are. And I'm just like, I'm so grateful to you. I've always been grateful to you, to be my lifelong friend. I'm grateful to you for sharing your courage and your heart with us today, and for making the space to come out and be with us. And you're just extraordinary. You're such a special person. I love you. You're my family, and I'm just so grateful for you. And you're beautiful. Your heart is beautiful, and you deserve all the goodness, and you have it. You have it, and we're here for you. I love you so much.
Well, I love you too, and thank you. And this is part of my growth. You felt me somehow, because you called right at the right time, and I just was, get me out of here. I didn't say it like that. You didn't know it, but that's what was going on in the back of my head. Yeah, please, I've got to start this journey somewhere, and this is going to be the best way to do it. Yeah.
I think we can end here. I
Yeah.
just can't thank you enough. You have made this week just beyond your presence being here and all the gifts you've given us and all the lessons. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. It's all a learning journey, and we will all I'm going to make more mistakes, but
We all do,
you.
and we're all
Yeah.
here for each other. I love you.
I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Gregory Norman Cruz, for your honesty, strength, and the wisdom you shared with us. Your presence, your words, and your story are a gift. Thank you to everyone who helped make this episode possible during We Are the Seeds Philly 2024, and to our Seeds team for creating the space for meaningful conversations like this to unfold. My name is Tailinh Agoyo. We appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time on From Here with a View, a We Are the Seeds Philadelphia podcast.